I need to be real with y'all. It's been pretty hard to defend Next.js over the last 2 years. There's a lot I love about it, but there have been a lot of things that rightfully people have been upset about. There's even a few that I'm personally very burned about. Don't get me started on the TurboPack stuff. It's been a lot. That said, there's been a significant course correction over the last few months, and we're starting to see it really come out with the latest version of Next, 15.3. There are a ton of useful changes both within the Next 15.3 release itself and within things going on around it, all of which are worth talking about and better understanding. So whether or not you're a Next.js dev, I think this will be useful just to better understand where the market is going and how Vercel is course correcting. If you are a Next.js dev, this is absolutely going to be an essential watch. But as you guys know, Vercel does not pay me anymore and hasn't for quite a while, so someone's got to cover the bills. So we'll be right back after the sponsor break, and then we'll dive right in. Generally speaking, when I'm starting new projects, I have a good idea of roughly what I want when I'm doing it, and using a CLI to do it's probably not going to get me there very fast. Today's sponsor, Bolt.new, really gets this. They're not some weird new startup doing AI-generated apps. This is StackBlitz, the company that made the only good editor in the browser and also invented the web container, which lets you run a full node environment in the browser. That's why Bolt is so great. They're the only one of these AI app platforms that runs all the code on your machine after you generate. So it makes everything way faster and more reliable in your development environment. And it's a real development environment. If you don't believe me, I'll just show you. Build a fan site for corgi lovers using Next.js. As you can see, it's already generating real code in a real editor, as well as a real terminal that I can run real node commands in, which is just crazy. And once it's all done, if I'm happy with the results, it's literally one click to deploy. I remember when I first got the demo of this from Eric, who's the CEO and a good friend. He came over just because he wanted to chat, and he showed this to me, and I just didn't get how it could possibly be working. And it makes a lot of sense that a few months later, they're killing it and everyone's starting their sites using Bolt. It's really good. Wait, what? Okay, the sites are normally pretty good, but this is like annoyingly so. What? It even found good images of corgis. There's this one that's not a corgi, but that is not an issue considering how good this came out. And it's real Next.js code. This is an actual Next.js app router code base. You can take a look at the page, see all the things here, and it's even using ShadCN. So if you like the ShadCN UI stuff, here you go. It's all built in. I still can't believe the other options don't have this. There's a hide chat button, so you can just live in the code, because a lot of us are actual engineers that want to actually look at and use the code from the project. That's also why they have an export button, where you can one-click open it in StackBlitz or just download the code as a zip, because it all exists in your browser, because it's a real instance. More and more, it feels like Bolt's the only one of these AI app builders that understands what we need as developers. And I firmly believe that just because I know the team so well. And these are some of the smartest and most hardworking open source people I know in the entire web world. So if you want a great way to start your next project, check out Bolt.new today at soydev.link/Bolt. So what makes Next 15.3 so special? First and foremost, it is the build side of things, because TurboPack finally now supports builds in alpha. That means you probably shouldn't be using this for production just yet, but they've been using it for production already at Vercel, which is really, really cool to see. They share some numbers underneath here. First off, though, over half of dev sessions on Next 15 are already using TurboPack, so they've had support in dev for a while. All the projects I work in use TurboPack in dev, and it's a massive difference. You go from waiting minutes for the dev environment to spin up to seconds, and updates with the hot reloading literally happen pretty much instantaneously, like under 100 milliseconds most of the time. It's so much better, and I couldn't work on a project the size of T3 Chat without TurboPack. It would just be miserable. The alternative would be Vite in the Vite ecosystem, which goes similarly fast, but that doesn't necessarily carry you through things like the server and client-side behaviors that Webpack and TurboPack currently allow. I've still yet to find a full-stack Vite framework that feels as complete in its implementation on both server and client side. That's why I find myself in Next, even if I'm throwing away a bunch of the built-in stuff. Their clear split and path for both the server and client side, as well as the relationship between them, is still very convenient. Waku is so far, it is hilarious, but thank you for mentioning it. Waku is really cool as a server component demo. It is not cool as a full-stack backend plus fronted in one code base thing. And Nuxt is cool, but not even close. Anyways. Vercel has maintained this Are We Turbo Yet page for a while now. Previously, it would default to development, where they had a set of tests that were needed for dev environments to work properly for Next Dev using TurboPack instead of Webpack. And there is just one random error here left. The rest are all handled. Now the site defaults to production, where it's still not quite there because they have to pass 8,095 tests. But they're very, very close. They have 57 left, and most projects should be able to at least build using this. Very, very cool to see. And the result's going to be way better build times. Since this can take more advantage of multi-core, multi-threading, because TurboPack was written in Rust, and it was written to use these threads and to use your processor better. 4 cores, you'll see a 28% speed improvement. 16 cores, you'll see 60%. And on a 30 core, probably not a desktop machine at your place, but some worker in the cloud, 83% faster builds. That's huge. Finally, having scaling with our threads fundamentally changes the build performance that we should expect using TurboPack in building our Next.js projects. This is not the only change to build, though. Historically, the build tools have just kind of been part of Next.js directly. One of the main reasons Next came out is so we would have to stop fussing with our Webpack configs. And that's been great. But now there's another alternative for Webpack, RSPack. And as of this release, there is now officially community support for RSPack instead. So if you want to use other options that aren't fully part of the Vercel ecosystem, you can now. This is huge. I never thought I would see the day that the deep tie that Next.js has to Webpack and now TurboPack would be broken at all to allow other options. But Vercel actually directly reached out to the RSPack team, and I've been in touch with them for a bit about this stuff. They were so hyped because no one expected it. It really shows this change in the philosophy on the Next team. Instead of just being an all-in-one set of pieces that you use if you need them and you throw away if you don't, it's becoming more modular, where given parts can use the thing Vercel provides or the thing someone else provides, which is why this other announcement with the deployment adapters API is such a big deal. This isn't technically part of the 15.3 release, but it was clearly meant to be aligned with it. The goal with the deployment adapters API is to allow for Next to be deployed anywhere, including serverless platforms with custom requirements. This is an important distinction because right now, without any of these changes, you can absolutely deploy Next.js wherever you want. The catch is you probably can only really deploy it in a Docker container because that's how you run Node applications. Vercel has built a really powerful infrastructure to split different parts of Next into different environments. So it's not just running in a Docker container. It's running compute in one place for your API calls and for your page gen. It's running a CDN somewhere else so it could serve static assets. It's running edge compute for middleware that redirects your requests. That separation is not fun to build yourself, and it is deeply baked into Vercel. And that's why Next is so nice on Vercel. Not because they made it hard to deploy elsewhere. There is no other framework that could be deployed to any other place that provides the level of integration that Next does on Vercel. That's not because they built Next to work that way. It's because Vercel allows it. And there are other frameworks too, like obviously Svelte, which is built at Vercel now. But even frameworks like Solid Start, I don't have a good experience deploying other places. And the functionality is not as deeply baked, especially the hybrid of static content, semi-static content, cache on the CDN, and dynamic content. The integration there is really, really hard, especially when compute isn't just always running with a dedicated server. So despite the fact that you can absolutely run Next on a dedicated server with no issues, a lot of cool functionality in modern Next.js, like incremental static revalidation, caching, middleware rewrites, and all these other useful pieces were not trivial to implement in serverless environments. The goal of the deployment adapters API is to make it easier for other platforms like Netlify to support deploying Next.js due to their custom requirements. That is a huge change. It's also worth noting this is an RFC. It's a request for comments. The Vercel team, and Lee in particular, really want to hear from the community to make sure that if they do this, they get it right. They want to learn lessons from projects like OpenNext to make sure that Next.js can be deployed well regardless of which environment you want to deploy it to. And limitations won't be in the integration between Next and the environment. It'll be the limitations of the environment itself. It is also worth noting that the existing build output API, that is the thing you build to ship on Vercel and take advantage of all of this infra, already is open and is a thing anyone can build integrations with. It'd be, as far as I understand, totally viable to port the Vercel build output format to run on something like Netlify, and then you can just build it the Next Vercel way and deploy it on your stuff. But different services have different expectations, and if they don't perfectly align with that build output API, they're screwed, which is why they're proposing changing the build output structure in order to make it easier for their competition to host Next apps. That's kind of crazy. Think about this for a second, logistically speaking. Vercel is trying so hard to fix this reputation damage, that they are spending a lot of money and effort and time and smart people's energy to make the build output of their main framework harder to maintain internally for Vercel, for their product, but also way easier in general to deploy. This is a massive undertaking to make life easier for their competition because they think that is important right now due to the fact that people have been harassing them about this stuff for so long. I still have the hot take that Vercel did not really do anything wrong in terms of support for other platforms, but the features they introduced were so cool and compelling, but so tied to specific infrastructure implementations that it optically looked bad that these cool new features were hard to do or not even viable to do on other hosting platforms. I also suspect that there are fewer and fewer of those groundbreaking infrastructure features coming to Next in the future. So now is a good time to make this cut because I do not think we'll ever have another server component moment with Next. I don't think we'll have another app router moment with Next. The closest thing we'll have is the TurboPack moment when it's actually ready. The question from Gabriel here is, will this slow down the pace of innovation of Next in the future? If the intent was to maintain the current pace, yes, absolutely. But I think the pace has inherently slowed down in terms of innovating within Next.js for a ton of reasons, be it the community outcry, the focus on AI stuff instead, the difficulty in integrating these things, the focus on making new infra primitives on Vercel directly instead. All of these things mean I would expect there to be much less innovation within the Next.js framework directly, which means it's okay to take a hit, so to speak, in your ability to iterate by changing the APIs these ways purely to help competition. ChatGPT now refers 10% of Vercel signups, which is accelerating. Yeah, you see where they are going. And adding more and more features to Next.js is no longer the strategy for the Next team and for Vercel. The future isn't more features in Next. The future is infra to better support the new types of apps and new types of developers who are building. The Next is definitely more open. The way I'm thinking about this is weird. That's why I want to write it all out. For a long time, my favorite way to try new tech has been Vercel. It's just been very reliable. The server primitives and the cool things you can do with it have been really, really killer. I've told this story a few times, but I got into Vercel as a front-end dev that had done a lot of backend in the past, but had mostly moved to front-end, that was working at a small startup with a really, really shitty backend team that was blocking me constantly. And I needed a few endpoints that they just weren't building for me that would hit an endpoint that we had a specific API key for to get data that users needed. And I discovered a really cool thing, the /API directory. My app was a React app built funny enough with Snowpack at the time, and then I ported it over to Vite when it got better. It's the last thing I did before I left this company. But with Vercel, if I deployed it there, I could add a directory named API, put a random TypeScript function in it, and all of a sudden that would automatically deploy to a serverless node environment that I could then hit from my app. That was magical. That was a huge, oh shit, I can do what moment for me. Even though this was very much, I ran the front end for this team, I was able to quickly stub out a specific backend function for a specific thing. This ended up being my introduction to the backend for front end pattern, and it fully rewired my brain. Huge, huge moment for me that led to the T3 stack existing was the discovery of this directory. Not with Next, just as a feature on Vercel directly. So as I've said before, I got into Vercel way before I got into Next.js. I thought it was an unnecessary abstraction because I already knew how to do Webpack configs, and I had moved to Vite at that point. So the API directory and the ability to just deploy a Vercel function by writing some TypeScript or Python or whatever else absolutely destroyed my brain. This ended up being the reason Vercel was my platform of choice. When I tried any new framework, be it an update to Next, a new flavor of Remix, Solid Start, Svelte, anything else, Vercel was where I deployed it because I knew Vercel's infra well, I knew what it was capable of, and it was the easiest way for me to quickly see the differences between these tools and technologies. I would regularly publish different benchmarks in tools like Astro and Svelte and Solid, and I would deploy all of them on Vercel because it was the easiest way to test. In fact, there was a while where you couldn't run Next on Edge, so to test Vercel's Edge network, I was deploying Astro on it. Because again, Vercel was the best set of primitives for me to play with a new tool or technology, and I found myself using them all the time in that way. Other platforms have caught up in meaningful ways. Netlify has their own really cool stuff nowadays too, especially on the queuing side. They are killing it over there. But I still find myself reaching to Vercel simply because it's the one I'm familiar with, and I understand the relationship between their primitives really well. So I think this is what's going to change a bit. Not that I won't like using Vercel, but almost the opposite. I use Vercel to test new frameworks. When a new framework comes out, the first thing I try to do is deploy it on Vercel. I see how that goes. What I think is going to happen now is, hopefully, I can use Next.js to test new providers. The same way I use Vercel to try out the new Svelte version, I see a future where I use Next.js to try out the new Cloudflare worker stuff. That would be very, very exciting for me. That would be a huge, exciting opportunity to test out the performance characteristics, cost benefit of different providers, and all of the other things you need to know about a given provider when you're making decisions for your business. All the things I like to talk about, I like to consult about, I like to help other businesses with, the things that you guys are all here to learn from me. It will be significantly easier for me to test out the new stuff they just shipped in Cloudflare's ship week if I could deploy Next on it super reliably with an existing open standard for doing it. I see a very exciting future where the same way I use Vercel to test frameworks, I can use Next to test other competitors. And my guess is they see this future too. They know that their infra, especially things like the fluid compute stuff, are far ahead enough that if you can deploy Next with all of its features other places, you'll still see a better experience on Vercel. I think it would make a lot of sense for them. There are a couple other important things in this release. Client instrumentation is a very nice change. Now there's a specific single spot where you can introduce instrumentation for your client. So things like Sentry and Highlight are way easier than ever to add tracking for. Also generic error handling and stuff like that. Really nice to see. They already had this for server side, but having it client side too, it's really cool. Also means now more than ever, I think there's an opportunity for somebody to come out with a minimal alternative to a product like Sentry that's also very AI integrated and ready and kill. So if you are building that and are interested in chatting, my DMs are open on Twitter. Would love to hear more. The future is now, and now is ready. Hell, I've been ready for like 5 years for a minimal Sentry alternative. So please, somebody make it happen. Oh, I didn't see this. New navigation hooks to enhance client-side routing capabilities in Next 15.3. So you can develop localized loading states to implement complex controls like navigation cancel. On Navigate is a very useful addition to the link component. The useLink status client component hook returns a pending boolean that indicates whether navigation is in progress. Woo! That is so good. That's so good. Custom load states just got 100 times better. I'm hyped on that. These are the types of changes that make it so I could theoretically actually move off of React Router for T3 chat. I'm not going to do it, but it's a lot more viable than it was prior. They made the plugin for TypeScript much better. Cool to see. I barely use it. I always forget about it. And I'm not using enough like Next internal stuff that it's super useful to me anymore. But I really want to test out these build speed changes. Let's see how fast I can build T3 chat with it. Pull latest. Kill my dev environment. I'm a little behind on Next versions, so forgive me. We're going to do a run build on this. See how long it takes on the current 15.1.6 that we are on. Build failed because of Webpack errors. Joy. What did I forget? Attempt 2. So, building on my maxed out M2 Pro takes about 50 seconds. Good to know. 28 total. I hate how these numbers are split, but it felt like 50 seconds. This is a build without TurboPack, to be clear. Just doing another build on the latest version to make sure. Well, still almost exactly the same amount of time without using TurboPack. And now, for the moment of truth, the TurboPack build. 11 seconds. That felt hilariously faster. Turns out this number does matter. This is CPU time because holy shit, that was significantly better. What I really want to see though is how much faster is this on Vercel's infra, like actually building. Theo, next turbo version bump. Also, fun thing, if anybody wants to build this, there is no good command to create a pull request for where I am. Like the GHPR create is super, super comically slow. The closest thing I've been able to find is I use lazy git. I press 3 and then I press O to open up the tab for making a pull request. It's by far the fastest because it hard codes the URL. And I've been unable to write a custom command to do it because lazy git won't take arguments to then trigger this. So somebody could make like a super simple one-line thing so I don't have to open up LazyGit every time I just want to open a PR. Because I do that, it's like instant now LG30 because it's the fastest way by far to do it, and it's annoying. I can never tell if you're trolling at any point, dev. Add a GitHub MCP server and let Cursor do it. The problem is the latency. Adding 3 to 10 round trips does not make it better. All I want is to automatically open the URL with the right stuff once I've pushed the branch. This one is not fast. This command is very slow. This is what I wanted to do, but the GHPR create does like 4 round trips before it can actually generate it. And even better, it will fail if your content for your description is too big, which happens automatically if you have enough commits. So it's very fun. And by fun, I mean entirely fucking broken. Oh, the build's already done. Okay, let's check out deployment speed for that. Not much better. Did I not? I committed the turbo change, didn't I? Git status. I did. Oh, that's a good call out. I didn't know this. TurboPack currently always builds production source maps for the browser. This will include project source code if deployed to production. Is it that your bundle size might be different from next build with Webpack? This will be improved as we work towards stability. This build is without disk caching. Subsequent builds will become faster when disk caching becomes available. When comparing output to Webpack builds, make sure to first clear the Next.js cache by deleting the .next directory. Okay. Why was this not more faster, though? Like, we have builds that are faster than that already. If I go make, like, a useless change, here, I'll change the 404. And let's see how long this build takes. Yeah. Chat is suspecting that the slowness is because it had to download all the packages again because I changed package lock, which makes sense. We will see how it performs now that that part at least should theoretically be cached. Yep, we're over what our shortest builds normally look like already. Yeah, the compilation step there still took over a minute. We scroll back up here to creating optimized production build. Like when it started, 32:53, gave some warnings, and then it was 33:40 it was done. So almost a minute of just compile. It says 46 seconds. Yeah. So similarly funny enough to when I tried showing off the roll down performance theoretical wins, I'm just not seeing it much. Like, if I deploy a brand new VDApp, the build time will be like 15 seconds, but a decent sized Next app still in the 1.5 to 2 minute range. But like our production build, our last one just was adding a missing icon, 57 seconds. It's not much faster here. My guess is that the boxes that the builds are running on are single core because historically multi-core has not benefited the build performance. And I would hope that they're going to buff up the build boxes alongside this change, maybe give them multiple cores. I was hoping for more there, though. Let's see if the preview build works, though. Captchas will likely fail because I don't have them set up for this URL. Yep, knew that. But everything works in the build. That's cool as hell. Seems like it's production-ish ready, but I was hoping for a bigger perf win. If you run your own build pipeline, this could be absolutely massive, but the deployment pipeline is just not seeing a meaningful change yet, sadly. I was very hopeful it would. But on my machine, again, where it has actual multiple cores to use for it, it's comically faster. 6.3 seconds for the compilation step for the entire project is hilarious. When previously, if I unturbo it quick, time, pm run, build. So here, build took over twice as long total, but the interesting number here, compiled successfully in 15 seconds versus 6 seconds. 6.3, 15.0. That's a huge difference, and it's one I'm very excited about. But that's the only number that could theoretically improve here. Another fun thing I'm just curious about. What's the HTOP alternative everybody tells me to use? I have it installed. BTOP. That's what I thought. Thank you, guys. Cool. So running, once again, not using TurboPack, you'll see my utilization here. And mind you, I don't stream from the computer that I am using here. I have a separate Windows rig over HDMI. So the only thing being used here is whatever apps I'm using plus this compilation. You see that like my cores aren't really being utilized a whole lot here. I'm guessing most of them are being more used by the Thunderbolt port and my browser than are being used by this compilation. And if I kill the .next and run it again, because I forgot to, we'll see one of my cores got utilized up to like 60%. Yeah, that one core, that's almost certainly the one running this. And now it's doing the bundling for the routes, which it can split already. And now I'm guessing it's done. Oh no, it's close. Yeah. But you can see very clearly most of the work goes on just one single core. Now that it's done, we can see it wasn't very fast. If I go back and turn back on TurboPack, and now we see here, hopefully, yeah, see that? That's the difference. All of my cores are being used. Oh, my terminal's not wide enough. God damn it. I can't hide my face. I'm just going to move this. It's already done. Let's time ppm run build. Cool. Here you can see all of my cores are being hammered. It is fully taking advantage of my system for that 6-second burst, and then it's done. Then it all throttles down. But that's the first time I've had a Next.js JavaScript build use all of the cores on my machine. I would bet that the amount of total compute being used is probably higher, but the result is a much faster build, which is really cool. So yeah, I think that should hopefully help you understand the performance characteristics and how this is better and worse and what the differences are. Hopefully you also now see why I'm excited about the future of Next.js as a platform to support every different place you might want to deploy your apps. I'm hyped. This seems like the right call for Next.js, and it also plays into an idea that I've been pushing more and more, which is that I don't think the future of frameworks is going to be endless new features and syntax and all of those things, because the AI has already been trained on the current everything we use. So my guess is that over time, we'll see more and more releases like this that are focused less on adding new APIs and functionality and more on improving what we already have so that existing output, existing code, existing AI tools and models generating new projects can all benefit without having to use new syntax. Are your feelings about Next changing after this release? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, peace nerds.